So welcome everyone to June's online forum. We're very excited to have Claire Cameron here talking to us today about communication skills. So I'm just going to hand straight over to Claire and she will take you through everything. So Claire, thank you very much.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody, and thanks for giving up your evening. You're very welcome here. I've a little bit of background. I was counting up the years. I've been in English language teaching for almost 50 years in various parts of the world and various locations, industry, universities, community ed, basically EAL and schools, everything. And I have over the years narrowed it down to being successful is all about connection. It's about connection, connecting with the learners and being able to communicate well with them. And of course, it's very difficult when we have a lot of us would have like beginner literacies learners. So this is just a general overview of communication. There's a lot in this course. It's been adapted for another course that I teach, which is in fact 3 hours long, but I have narrowed it down. I've tried to make it relevant to us, and I hope you'll all go away with something tonight. I'm not really talking about classroom practice. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our way of communication, basically communication skills, communication styles. And I've also got a little bit in about, dealing with difficult situations and various little tips here and there. So this is what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to talk about our voice. And active listening, I'm going to talk about active listening. Some of you already know that, but we're going to have a little look at that and communicate clearly. We're going to identify behavior styles and communication types because your behavior style and your type of communication is going to very much influence how you deliver your sessions and how you interact with the learners. Talk a little bit about non-verbal communication, jargon and assumptions, intercultural communication, and how to handle difficult conversations and gain strategies to deal with bullying. 1 in 5 children are bullied at school, and 1 in 4 adults have been bullied in the workplace. So I imagine there's probably somebody here this evening, probably at least one person who has had to deal with bullying in the workplace. So, oh, what's this going on? Drawing? Is that something is drawing on my screen and it's not me. Anyway, little red spider lines. So we'll go on to the next slide. And I'd like you to look at this. Which communication skills, probably I was just flailing around with that. Don't worry about that drawing thing. Which communication skills would you like to improve most? And if you look at those ones from 1 to 6, just you don't need to put them in order, but if you want to put them in the chat, just share with us which one you would like to communicate with. And I'll try and get rid of these. I probably clicked on the drawing thing by mistake and it's gone on my screen. It'll come off. It not too much of a distraction. I'm not used to using Zoom. I use Teams more. So if you want to pop in the chat, which of those you can use 2, 3, 4, none, 1, 6, oh, 6 of them, as many as you like.
Somebody just wrote being assertive. Another person wrote number 5, handling conflict. That's mine as well, I would say. And handling conflict.
Yes, so oops, go back a minute. I'll put that slide up again.
Somebody said mostly 2 and 4.
Yes, I've seen that on the chat.
All of them.
So all of them. Okay, so we are going to just have a look at verbal communication now. Sorry, I'm going back. Yeah. So we're going to have a little look at verbal communication. And hang on a minute. No, sorry. I wanted to do that just while we're waiting for everybody to be here. This is the task where I would like you to go into groups. I'm trying to get rid of the chat, minimize the chat here. It's in the middle of my page. What I'd like you to do is look at those 4 topics there, and you're going to go into breakout rooms for, I think we said like just 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes. Just quickly go into breakout rooms and just discuss those topics. See if you can get some ideas for them.
I am just setting up the rooms because it's currently set to
Yeah?
30 minutes. We don't want people to be in the breakout room for 30 minutes, so I will
No,
change
no, not
that.
for 30 minutes. So important teaching skills, teaching challenges, 1 or 2 is enough for each topic, factors that make your job enjoyable, and reasons people leave jobs. Why do people leave? You know, so it's just to get us into the mood. I did the other exercise first. Welcome back, everybody. We're just going to a little warm up, and I'll go back to the slideshow. So we don't really have time for feedback, but I think if we look at all of these topics, a lot of them are to do with communication, really, aren't they? If you know, the communicating, what makes your job enjoyable, the connection with the learners, probably a lot of you said that, and important. A lot of these topics here are actually to do with communication, and the reasons people leave jobs, apart from obviously, you know, maybe leaving in the area or money, often it's bad communication with management, you know, it's bullying or not getting on with management, having, you know, bad managers. That people, they say people leave managers, they don't leave jobs. So that can often be a communication issue as well. So I would imagine, as I say, I'd love to have time for feedback from your groups, but there isn't. But I can imagine a lot of those topics that you discussed would involve communication. So if we look at verbal communication, we've got, oops, sorry. Where have I got this? I have to come out of the slide to get the, yeah. So we're going to look at how to speak so people want to listen. This is a very interesting TED Talk, and we can't listen to the whole thing, but okay, with this recording, we will listen to, what happened to my screen? Right, here we go. So this is a TED Talk by somebody called Julian Treasure, and he talks about communication, how we shouldn't use our voices to gossip or to judge or criticize. But there's a section in this TED Talk where he talks about our actual voice, and it's really important when we're teaching to pay attention to our voice and how we're using it. So it's the middle section of the talk. The first section of talk is very interesting. It's about what we actually say, but we don't need that today. This is about our voice. And the last section is some vocal exercises to help you project your voice. We'll not do that either, but we're just going to listen to this section here. So here we go.
Also, now that's what you say, and it's like the old song, it is what you say, it's also the way that you say it. You have an amazing toolbox. This instrument is incredible, and yet this is a toolbox that very few people have ever opened. I'd like to have a little rummage in there with you now and just pull a few tools out that you might like to take away and play with, which will increase the power of your speaking. Register, for example. Now, falsetto register may not be very useful most of the time, but the register in between, I'm not going to get very technical about this for any of you who are voice coaches. You can locate your voice, however. So if I talk up in my nose, you hear the difference. If I go down here in my throat, which is where most of us speak from most of the time. But if you want weight, you need to go down here to the chest. You hear the difference? We vote for politicians with lower voices. It's true, because we associate depth with power and with authority. That's register. And we have timbre. It's the way your voice feels. Again, the research shows that we prefer voices which are rich, smooth, warm, like hot chocolate. Well, if that's not you, that's not the end of the world, because you can train. Go get a voice coach. And there are amazing things you can do with breathing, with posture, with exercises to improve the timbre of your voice. Then prosody. I love prosody. This is the sing-song, the meta-language that we use in order to impart meaning. It's route one for meaning in conversation. People who speak all on one note are listened to if they don't need prosody at all, where the word monotonic comes from, or monotonous, monotone. Also, we have repetitive prosody now coming in, where every sentence ends as if it were a question, when it's actually not a question, it's a statement. And if you repeat that one over and over, it's actually restricting your ability to communicate through prosody, which I think is a shame. So let's try and break that habit. Pace. I can get very, very excited by saying something really, really quickly, or I can slow right down to emphasize. And at the end of that, of course, is our old friend, silence. There's nothing wrong with a bit of silence in a talk, is there? We don't have to fill it with ums and ahs. It can be very powerful. Of course, pitch often goes along with pace to indicate arousal, but you can do it just with pitch. Where did you leave my keys? Where did you leave my keys? It's a slightly different meaning in those two deliveries. And finally, volume. I can get really excited by using volume. Sorry about that if I startled anybody. Or I can have you really pay attention by getting very quiet. Some people broadcast the whole time. Try not to do that. That's called sodcasting. Imposing your sound on people around you carelessly and inconsiderately. Not nice. Of course, where this all comes into play most of all is when you've got something really important to do. It might be standing on a stage like this and giving a talk to people. It might be proposing marriage, asking for a raise, a wedding speech, whatever it is. If it's really important, you owe it to yourself to look at this toolbox and the engine that it's going to work on. And no engine works well without being warmed up. Warm up your voice. Actually, let me show you how to do that. Would you all like to stand up for a moment?
Right, so then he goes on and gives a few little exercises, but it's interesting to realize that we have this repertoire in our voice, and especially when we're teaching English language, we want to vary our pitch and our tone, our pace, so we can make it interesting for the learners as well. And I think if you look at that little toolbox and think, well, how much do I use that? Can I develop that? Can I improve? So there we go, verbal communication. And I wanted to just talk about the tones. So we've got tone, clarity, pace, volume, emphasis, clear articulation. Now, grading language, in verbal communication, we have to think very carefully about grading our language. And he talked about pauses, silence, and language teaching, also repetition. Repetition is very important. But I'm going to just talk about grading language. I was teaching a very low level literacies group online yesterday. And I thought, well, I shall go to BBC English My Way, which I've not used for a while. Okay. So I'm going to play this, which came here in the market. Here's the little video, Aisha. Has anybody used this? Put up your electronic hand if you use this, English My Way. Nobody? It's kind of pathetic, but it's, you know, if you're running out of ideas for literacies learners, it's okay. It's ridiculously pathetic. But anyway, I will show you what we were looking at yesterday and what annoyed me. The volume's always a bit soft on it, but that's the best I can do.
Clocks for everyone. Watching clocks.
Excuse me, how much is this clock?
For you, I can do that clock for £10.
£10?
Yeah, that's right.
Here you are.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So then obviously the clock doesn't work. But here's the tape script here. So, excuse me, how much is this clock? For you, I can do that clock for £10. And we're a very low level. So how much we can do, excuse me, could do, but suddenly throws this in. For you, I can do that clock for £10. So, sorry, we've come off. Where's the BBC? Clicked onto that by mistake. So do you see, that's not graded language. The individual words for you, I can do that clock for 10. All my literacies learner can actually read that, but they don't understand what it means. It's too colloquial, it's too difficult. And then we've been spent ages telling them that plurals have an S and then suddenly puts £10. And I can't explain, well, he's a Cockney market stall holder, so they don't put the S on pounds. And then, yeah, that's the rest of it's okay. But you see what I mean? It's really important to be vigilant about how we grade the language. Because actually it's okay. They've got little exercises, check your understanding. That's quite easy, but it's annoying because it's right through the whole series is the inconsistency of the language being graded. It's completely inconsistent. And it's okay. I mean, there's I think 10 episodes or something, but there's always something in it that throws the learners, so it's irritating. And another thing, what would we do? Yeah, the SC. Does anybody use these materials as well? The SQA ESOL materials. They're fine, but the problem is their listenings are difficult for people to understand. So if we look at this, it's launched in a pop-up window. Yeah. So if we look at this, for example, takes forever to get in. It's really weird, but here we are. So there's a little listening here, and I just want you to listen and put yourself in the shoes of a beginner learner, because it's kind of, beginner plus. So listen to this.
Up to a year ago, Ante Matthews worked for a bank here in Glasgow. She drove to work in a Porsche, she wore a business suit, and she solved computer problems. She was good at her work and earned a high salary. Now she has her own shop. It's called Music Online. It's quite small and she says it doesn't make very much money. So, Ante, what happened?
Well, I was with the bank for 8 years, but then I had some money problems. A lot of people had to leave, and I was one of them. I didn't want to move to another company, so I did something new. I had always liked music, but I can't sing very well or play any instrument. But it's like music and computer have come together recently.
So what do you sell in the shop?
Anything that can help you to download and listen to music, iPods, things like that, and also software for people who want to listen on their computer at home. I run classes too, because a lot of people, even young people, have problems with the new technology.
But isn't it too much for a change?
Totally different, but I love it. In the old job, when I saw a problem, it wasn't real somehow. Now, when I show somebody how to do something, I see the result. Also, instead of some same people every day, well, I've met so many interesting people since I started the shop.
Okay, but isn't it the lower salary difficult to live on?
Well, I have sold the Porsche, but we are getting more and more customers, so things are improving. I'm not making much money yet, but I know things will be okay.
So, any regrets?
None at all. I'm very happy when I go to work every day. Last week, I drove past the bank's building where I worked before. I just thought it's so nice to do something different.
Well, Antea, thanks very much. And good luck with the shop.
Thanks.
Observations about that in the chat? Do you want to put some observations or talk? Tell me what you think about that.
David wrote quality and speed.
Yes.
Slow. Somebody said it's not flowing. Too high for National 3.
Spoken grammar, I know about spoken grammar, yes. So quality and speed, yeah. it's hard. You can see why the rationale behind using it, because it's authentic, but it's actually very difficult for people to understand. Normally, if I've ever taught this, I've had to just get them to follow it with the tape script, which isn't what we want for listening. But again, it's why is it hard to understand? What elements of voice that we saw in that video, what elements of voice are making it hard to understand?
And that said, it's quite monotonous, and there's questions about intonation and
Intonation and monotonous, yes. So it's making it quite hard to understand. Although we can see the rationale, it's good. I mean, the rationale behind it is really good, using, authentic non-native speakers for the listenings, but it kind of backfires at the lower levels. So we have to be careful when we're teaching lower levels, that we have to really be clear in our communication. So off we go, and we shall go on to the next slide. So that's our verbal communication. And the next one is just on the next two slides are a couple of videos that I've left in from when the course is a bit longer, about they're kind of being basic communication skills and how to be a better listener. And we're going to look now at active listening, because this is a really important skill. Can you put your electronic hand up if you have done active listening before and you know what it's like? You know what it involves? I'll come out to the presentation so I can see. Who's got their hands up? Yeah, so we're going to practice this a little bit and have a little revision for people who've already, some people have and some people haven't. So this is active listening. We need to show interest. We'll start here at the top right. Show interest, listen for feelings, signal encouragement, observe non-verbal behavior, avoid interruption, distraction. Don't be looking at your phone. Probe, ask them probing questions. Not yes, no questions, but kind of open questions. Reflect, you can reflect back. So you're telling me you're upset because your neighbor keeps parking in front of your drive, just something like that. Avoid prejudice and avoid giving advice, avoid criticism, avoid judgment, any of those. And use your open and closed questioning, although open ones are really better, and clarify. If there's anything that's not clear, you clarify, and at the end you summarize what the person has said. So you don't really speak much. You encourage them and say, go on, and you ask a few little open questions for some more information, and then you summarize back what they have said to you. That's active listening. So the art of listening, you can read this yourselves. And especially with our learners, we tend to not give them space. We often jump in, we want to try to make things better. We often jump in with advice or try and finish their sentences if they can't find the right word, but maybe just try listening a bit more, just active listening. Okay, now we're going to watch this. This is extreme listening. Okay. And cases where, well, I'll let you make your own judgment. I'm going to show you this. This is really interesting, and it's extreme active listening. All right. And so we're going to watch this.
So listening is not the act of hearing the words spoken. It is the art of understanding the meaning behind those words. When people say you're not listening to me, and we simply parrot back the word that they've said, congratulations, you're either, that is the act. That is the act of listening. But the art of listening is creating an environment in which the other person feels heard. Now, you notice what I said there. The other person, and I used an emotional word, feels, right? I don't want to know that you've heard the words. I want to feel heard, feel seen. I want to feel understood. And that is a learnable, practicable skill. So it's there are many parts of it. It's things like replacing judgment with curiosity, right? That's a hard thing to do. We're a pretty judgy group, right? To be curious where someone has a point of view. It's creating a safe space for someone to, as my friend Dia Khan calls it, empty the bucket. So even if we find what they're saying just reprehensible, right? You're never going to be able to actually have dialogue until at least one of the parties gets the opportunity to say everything without judgment. And as she calls it, emptying the bucket. And once person feels like they're completely, then they're more listen to you. Usually what we do is we defend, or we litigate, or we interrupt. We point out flaws in logic, which is just frustrating. And when you point out flaws in somebody's logic, because we're all imperfect when we speak, and we all choose the wrong words at various times. And that's not what I meant. You know what I meant is what we have to say. Well, wait, if you know what you meant, then why don't you say what you can see how this spirals. But it's things like when somebody says something, and there's really easy ways to do it. Things like, go on, tell me more. What else? And they keep talking. And you go quiet and fill the space. Tell me more. Go on. And eventually, it's all out. And then there's a safe space for you to respond or and express yourself in a constructive way. But that's correct. We do not teach listening, and listening is the way to create to build trust with someone. You make someone feel heard, they'll trust you. It is the way to find common ground in opposition, in simple cases in business, but in more complicated cases in national politics or in global or war. Why do William Ury, who wrote Getting to Yes, he talks about the same thing. He goes, we have talk shows, but we don't have listen shows. He says we have peace talks, but what we really need is peace listens. And he who's been at the table of at the highest levels of peace negotiations, he said people show up and start demanding what they want, and that's how the negotiations begin. Nobody starts by saying, so tell me why you came here. There's a great documentary that I recommend to learn this called White Right, Meeting the Enemy by Dia Khan. In a nutshell, Dia is a Muslim woman living in the UK who was trolled by white supremacists to the point where the police got involved because her life was at risk. They told her to stay away from open windows. That's how bad it got. The way Dia responded was by moving to the United States and going to meet the white supremacists. And she brought her cameras, and you can see it all happen in this documentary. And basically, she gave them a safe space to feel heard. Now, that sounds mad. Like, why should she give them a safe space to feel heard? They should give her a safe space. Yeah, fine, good. Like, it's never going to happen. Dia sits down with these white supremacists, and she gives them a safe space to feel heard. It's extreme listening. And I say it's extreme because, they hate her, They don't just disagree with her. They want her off the planet. And she let them empty their bucket, as she calls it. And then conversation begins. And because they feel heard, they start to trust her. And as they start to trust her, she becomes a friend. And then it creates this paradox where I'm supposed to hate this woman, but I trust her and consider her a friend. And what you see is one by one, these white supremacists, these diehard white supremacists, start dropping out of the movement because they can no longer reconcile their beliefs with reality. And if it can happen in this extreme environment, then it can happen anywhere. And all that is required for us to cross political divides or disagreements at work and things like that is one of the parties has to learn how to listen. It doesn't even require both parties to learn the skill. That's the amazing thing. And it is one of the most remarkable skills that anyone can learn. The power of listening. Yeah. So the documentary is a great extreme example of what to do.
Great. So what we're going to do is practice a little bit of this, and I want you to think, how could you use this in your classroom practice? Because when we're getting students to speak, we often get into like peer work situations, like you say this and you say that, and we put the words into their mouths, okay? Oh, you're at the travel agent, you're selling the ticket and you want to book a holiday. You do this, but we often don't give them a chance to speak uninterrupted with their own story, and the other person just listen to them. So I'd like you to challenge you to think a little bit. Is there any way you can use active listening with your learners? You listening to your learners yourself if they have issues, but also for learners to listen to other learners. Is there any way you could incorporate active listening into your classroom practice? So we're going to do a little activity in pairs. I don't know, Emma, if you can get us into pair work rooms for this. So what you're going to do is just very short. We're going to have person A tell your partner about something that you're bothered, angry, upset, or worried about. And B, you're just using the active listening techniques. You're just going to listen and you're going to give the full attention. So you need your cameras on. You're going to give them the full attention and ask little probing questions or encourage them to go on. And after they've finished, then you're going to summarize what they said. Now we've got 6 minutes for this exercise, so maximum 2 minutes to speak about what you're talking about. It should be enough. And then other person's summary back. And that's all you do. No judgment, no advice, no comment. That's all you do. And then you swap round, okay? So Emma, I'm ready when you are with the breakout rooms.
Yeah, I'm just making sure that people are in pairs.
If you've got a 3, it doesn't really matter. Unless...
No, it's more the breakout rooms are not letting me assign everyone that I need to assign, which is a bit bizarre. But oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah, everyone's in pairs, so we'll open the rooms and they know what they're doing.
6 minutes, yes. Does everybody know what they're doing? Yeah.
Cool. 6 minutes off we go.
Everybody back. That's lovely. So welcome back. How does it feel being listened to? Has anybody got any observations on that? How does it feel when somebody's giving you their full attention without judgment or wanting to just talk back at you?
I can speak for myself. It was wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Ellie. I feel a lot better.
I feel I should have paid Kasia for her therapy time.
Yeah,
it is wonderful, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one of the most important communication skills. And also, you know, I was doing job applications courses for civil service today, and I said, it's something that we forget to put on our job applications. We forget it's a skill. It's a really valued skill by employers, and it's also a very valuable skill for you to have both in your personal life and in the classroom. And I think, you know, if you can be bold, and maybe if you've got slightly higher level learners, just give them, try and find a scenario that they can actually do that in, you know, in some situation. So on we go. So that is active listening for us. And we're going to just watch this for a minute. It's very short.
First, there was...
I'll not bother going out of the slide. It's just very quick.
First, there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it. Can you get the butter, please? Yeah. However, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then you get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true. But the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yeah. not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Oh, wait a second. They.
The Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
So there we go. Active listening. So try to incorporate it in some way in your lives and in your classroom. So now we're going to move on to personality types for communication. These are personality types, and you're probably familiar with them, but let's just have a little overview again of them. We've got passive that tend to suppress their thoughts, and aggressive, passive aggressive, and assertive. So I'll let you read that slide yourselves. I don't need to read it for you. So these are personality types, and then we're going to look at communication styles, which is a bit different, but we're going to look at personality types here. And I am going to give you a little quiz. I've got some quizzes up here. We'll just do the basic one here. Let me get this up for you, the one I had ready. It always disappears when you want it. That's not the one. You've got to put your email in. This one. So what you have to do in this quiz, I'll put the link in. You just look at the, there's 4 sections, and look at the sentences and just choose the ones that resonate with you, and the score that's got the most in it is your type, or if there's a combination of 2, then you're a combination of the 2. But there should be one that has the most type, the most in it. And Zoom. Where am I getting the chat? Trying to find the chat box here. Hang on, I'll come out. Oh, here we go. Put it in the chat for you. There we go. So just have a look at that. It's a little bit of fun, a little fun quiz, and it will help you identify your style, but you also might recognize other people, and it also might help you identify your students' styles, personality type, and help you more deal with them in the classroom. You can't open it.
No, it's just it's the firewall on my work computer. They block anything which isn't considered work related. So
really, would they block this one as well? I wonder if I put the other ones in, would they block them all?
No, knowing the filters on the system, yes. But I can try. I can get them from the recording later.
Try that. Will it block that one?
No, that one's open actually. I can do that one. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's the one you've got to put your email address in, maybe. One of them you've got to just put your email in.
I'll see what they say.
That one might be slightly longer. You finished? Well done. You can click on the other one if you like. We've almost finished anyway, time-wise. We need to crack on. So you probably got an idea from the questions what the different types are. And I'm sorry if you've not had time to finish it, but those are the different types. And a lot of people would have problems with being assertive enough. Assertiveness is something that a lot of us struggle with, you know. We're maybe too polite, or we're not good at being assertive without getting upset, or, you know, over egging things. So what I've done here is I've put some links there, some assertiveness links for you. So there's how to be assertive. There's a free online assertiveness courses. There's quite a few courses you can do and know the difference between these. And there's a very good video on YouTube. There's loads of good videos. But if you really feel that you need to increase your assertiveness, or if you've got higher level students that might benefit from becoming more assertive if they're very, because, you know, it's some cultures, you know, people are overly polite and stand back a lot, and they might need a little encouragement in being more assertive. So this is something that you could pass on to your learners, you know. Um, Also, this is another thing to practice with learners, certainly at higher levels, and you can do it yourself. These are called I statements, and they follow a model. And when you first start using them, they feel really clunky and awkward. But if you get into the habit of, they're very effective, because I feel this when you do that, because blah de blah, I would like you to do this in future, or in future, please do this. And it's very good for dealing with, you know, difficult people who upset you, because nobody can tell you how you feel. You know, you can fight back and say, well, don't do that, or you always do this. But if you put it upon yourself, nobody can actually tell you how you feel. So read the examples. Okay, so you tell the person how you feel, tell the person what they did to make you feel that way, tell the person why you feel that way, and tell the person what you want them to do now. So we're not using you always do this, you expected, you wanted me to do that, you didn't. This is very effective for dealing with overbearing people, people making too many demands on you, people upsetting you. It's very, very effective. So what we're going to do is you're going to write your own statement. I hope you've all got pen and paper. Choose an imaginary or a real situation. I feel when you do something because, and next time, please, or I would like you to, okay? So write a statement on a situation, real or imaginary, just practicing that formula. So it's very effective. It's not blaming people. It's not saying you always do this. It's not you. It's I. It's an I statement. So it's actually a very effective way of communicating. And you can use that in a variety of situations. And as I say, if you've got higher level students, you can maybe, if you're talking about, you know, their rights or communicating with people, they can use this in all sorts of situations. Here's some examples. And if the whole thing feels too heavy and too clunky, you can just choose the first two. I feel this when you do that. That's all you need to do. You don't need to go through the whole. Of course, it's better to do the 4 elements, but you can use just the 2. Okay. So communication styles, we're going to look at the styles. We've looked at the personality types, assertive, aggressive, etc. And we don't really have time to look at the quiz, but there's a quiz there, which you'll have the link you'll be able to see later. And there's a video that goes into great explanations about the different communication styles. But we've looked at personality types, aggressive, assertive, and it's really quite hard to change, but you can become more assertive by doing those courses and practicing and becoming aware of your behavior. Now, these are communication styles that you can kind of use different ones depending on the situation. These tend to be, this is kind of from managerial training, management training, but they are useful. All of us have a preferred style. So in a nutshell, as I say, the video goes into great depth into it. It's really interesting. But in a nutshell, we've got the analytical, and they like numbers and data, and are we sure that's going to happen? The intuitive person just is a kind of a broad brushstroke person. What's the bottom line? Can we skip to the end? And you'll see this in your learners as well. Some learners, they just want to get on with it, and they don't want to write everything down. So, well, kind of, I've remembered it. You know what I mean? And other people, they like to be very particular, functional. What's the process? What happens next? How long? Who does what? They want to know exactly what's going on. How long is it going to take? What are we going to do? What's ahead? They really want to know a process, step-by-step process. And personal is just like feeling words, and how do they feel, and how do you feel, and how do they feel? How do people feel? So if we think of our groups of learners, we have different types. We've got people who behave in all sorts of different ways. And yes, it's their personality, but it can also be their communication style. This can be their style, and that's just how they like to communicate. So I've done a little sort of matrix because we've got 4 and 4. So we've got the personality types, and then we've got the communication styles. So if you want to read that slide, there's a little recap of what we've been looking at. So I made a little matrix here so you can see. Assertiveness is the goal for healthy workplace communication, regardless of communication style. So any type of communication, it doesn't not necessarily workplace, we would say, or kind of teaching. So we want assertiveness, but you can have these different communication styles. All of them have their own strengths and weaknesses. So see if you can find yourself here on this matrix. Where are you? Hopefully somewhere on the assertive line. And you can maybe think of a manager that wasn't such a very good manager you've had in the past. Maybe you've had some manager in the past that wasn't very good. Why were they not good? Which of these boxes did they fall into that made them not a good manager? So that's worth bearing in mind. When we're talking about communication, we have to bear in mind people's communication style and their personality type, because that has a bearing on how non-verbal communication, body language, and especially dealing with non-native speakers of English and English second language learners. Body language is important. You can convey a lot with body language. So I'm going to show you a little clip. If I can find the right, yes, I've got it in the right place. I've got it ready. Yeah, I've just got it right. Right. So we're going to watch this very short clip. This is about helping you be more confident. This is Amy Cuddy, who did a lot of research about students and people going for interviews. And if they used expansive, powerful body language, they not only impressed the people that they were engaging with, but they also themselves became more powerful. It changed their physiology. So we're going to just have a look at this. It's quite short. We're not going to read the whole thing, but the bit we're going to look at is quite short. Now you go away, pen. So there we go.
So I want to start by offering you a free no-tech life hack. And all it requires of you is this, that you change your posture for 2 minutes. But before I give it away, I want to ask you to right now do a little audit of your body and what you're doing with your body. So how many of you are sort of making yourself smaller? Maybe you're hunching, crossing your legs, maybe wrapping your ankles. Sometimes we hold on to our arms like this. Sometimes we spread out. I see you. So I want you to pay attention to what you're doing right now. We're going to come back to that in a few minutes. And I'm hoping that if you sort of learn to tweak this a little bit, it could significantly change life unfolds. So we're really fascinated with body language, and we're particularly interested in other people's body language. You know, we're interested in like, you know, an awkward interaction or a smile or a contemptuous glance or maybe a very awkward wink or maybe even something like a handshake.
Here they are arriving at number 10 and look at this lucky policeman gets to shake hands with the President of the United States. Oh, and here comes the Prime Minister of it. No.
So a handshake talking for weeks and weeks and weeks, even the BBC and the New York Times. So obviously, when we think about nonverbal behavior or body language, but we call it nonverbals as social scientists, it's language. So we think about communication. When we think about communication, we think about interactions. So what is your body language communicating to me? What's mine communicating to you? And there's a lot of reason to believe that this is a valid a long time, looking at the effects of our body language or other people's body language on judgments. And we make sweeping judgments and inferences from body language. And those judgments can predict really meaningful life outcomes, like who we hire or promote, who we ask out on a date. For example, Nalini Ambady, a researcher at Tufts University, shows that when people watch 30-second soundless clips of real physician-patient interactions, their judgments of the physician's niceness predict whether or not that physician will be sued. So it doesn't have to do so much with whether or not that physician was incompetent, but do we like that person and how they interacted? Even more dramatic, Alex Todorov at Princeton has shown us that judgments of political candidates' faces in just 1 second predict 70% of US Senate and gubernatorial race outcomes. And even, let's go digital, emoticons used well in online negotiations can lead you to claim more value from that negotiation. If you use them poorly, bad idea, right? So when we think of nonverbals, we think of how we judge others, how they judge us, and what the outcomes are. We tend to forget, though, the other audience that's influenced by our nonverbals, and that's ourselves. We are also influenced by our nonverbals, our thoughts and our feelings and our physiology. So what nonverbals am I talking about? I'm a social psychologist. I study prejudice, and I teach at a competitive business school. So it was inevitable that I would become interested in power dynamics. I became especially interested in nonverbal expressions of power and dominance. And what are nonverbal expressions of power and dominance? Well, this is what they are. So in the animal kingdom, they are about expanding. So you make yourself big, you stretch out, you take up space, you're basically opening up. It's about opening up. And this is true across the animal kingdom. It's not just limited to primates, and humans do the same thing. So they do this both when they have power sort of chronically, and also when they're feeling powerful in the moment. And this one is especially interesting because it really shows us how universal and old these expressions of power are. This expression, which is known as pride, Jessica Tracy has studied, she shows that people who are born with sight and people who are congenitally blind do this when they win at a physical competition. So when they cross the finish line and they've won, it doesn't matter if they've never seen anyone do it, they do this. So the arms up in the V, the chin is slightly lifted. What do we do when we feel powerless? We do exactly the opposite. We close up, we wrap ourselves up, we make ourselves small. We don't want to bump into the person next to us. So again, both animals and humans do the same thing. And this is what happens when you put together high and low power. So what we tend to do when it comes to power is that we complement the other's nonverbals. So if someone's being really powerful with us, we tend to make ourselves smaller. We don't mirror them, we do the opposite of them. So I'm watching this behavior in the classroom, and what do I notice? I notice that MBA students.
Now, that just gives you a little insight into this power, what she's talking about, this powerful pose, this expansive pose, which you can use to, take control if you're in a big classroom or a classroom where people aren't paying attention, or you want to get people's attention and give off that powerful energy. It's called the Superman and Superwoman pose. And she goes on to talk about all the research she did that shows that if people did this pose for just 2 minutes before an interview or before, giving a lecture, for example, they actually changed their power dynamic in themselves as well. It had a physiological effect on themselves, and they actually felt more powerful. The interview results were better. The people who'd done this had more chance of getting the jobs. So I'm just showing you that your body language can affect not only the people seeing it, but also you yourself. So it's just something to bear in mind that if we're teaching, we want to be not powerful in a dominating way, but just to hold the attention of the learners, to hold the room, to have a presence. So it's basically you hold your chin up, maintain a strong posture, lift your chest forward, pull your shoulders down and back, okay? So these expansive poses initiated a feeling and a sense of power in individuals who otherwise felt powerless. And you may, if you've got learners who are maybe going for an interview, or they have got to, have an awkward meeting with people, you can pass this on to them and let them see if that helps them feel a little bit more confident and powerful. So there is an interesting video there. Is reading minds through body language. It's different types of body language. It goes into a bit more depth if you're interested. Now, we're going to move on to jargon. The definition of jargon. Jargon is specialized language used by specific groups, often in professional or technical fields. That's the definition of it. And the challenge is it can alienate or confuse those unfamiliar with it. We do not want to use jargon with our students in any way. If we look at this, these are all jargon. We can teach them common jargon, but we have to make sure that we use plain language and explain it. So we have to be really, really careful using jargon. Now, the next thing I'm going to move on is assumptions. Assumptions can be very dangerous. Looking at this diagram, just read this slide and looking at this diagram, what disaster are they talking about and what assumptions was it? Any idea?
I guess it's about the Titanic.
Yes, about the Titanic. The assumption was clear. Nobody had double-checked, then double-checked. And in reality, the icebergs were further south. So assumptions arise when people believe others share the same knowledge or experiences, leading to misunderstanding. And especially with different cultures, we can't make assumptions. So you have to avoid assumptions. You have to check for understanding and asking clarifying questions and providing context. That all helps reduce misinterpretations. So it's really important that we clean the window. I love this quote by Isaac Asimov. Your assumptions are your windows on the world. Scrub them off every once in a while or the light won't come in. Think of all the assumptions we have that we go through with in our daily lives. How much clearer would our lives be if we just cleared off the windows? So it's really important in teaching and with our learning, don't make assumptions. Don't assume that the previous teachers taught them this, that, or the next thing. Don't assume things about their daily lives. Don't assume anything. Don't assume anything about them unless you know it. And try to clean off your windows on the world. Now, I'm not talking much about written communication, but I am going to just say a little bit about texting and digital communication because we do sometimes text our learners. Here is so texting. So it says business, but it's also for, teaching. So pay attention. You can read this yourselves, just the timing. Probably you don't have access to students for texting, but some of you may if you're, running classes. And the tone, consider what you're texting. And don't use symbols and emojis, be short. Privacy, get permission to text. Professionalism. So there's just a few things to bear in mind if you do use texting as a means of communication with your learners. Just make sure that you're doing it all correctly. Now, the last two things we're going to look at briefly is the first thing is intercultural communication. And I don't know if you've heard of Hofstede, but he did what would you call it really, cultural dimensions. That's the word I'm looking for. Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Now, this is old. He did it, many years ago. And he was an academic and he studied loads of different countries underneath these, and he categorized them in these different headings, these different categories. So power distance, for example, power distance, the difference between an egalitarian democratic type of country or a very hierarchical one with a dictator, collectivism versus individualism. Some countries are very individualistic and the individual is important, others the collective, the family, the village, the group is more important. uncertainty avoidance index. This is quite interesting in the workplace, and it's quite cultural. Some cultures, and I know I'm stereotyping here, and we've got a lot more globalism, there's a lot more interface between cultures, but it's quite interesting for you to know that this exists, and you can look at the tool. Comfortable with uncertainty, like, you don't need to know everything. You go to a meeting and you get some broad instructions, and that's enough for you. And somebody might want much more detail. No, I need to know exactly what's happening. Then uncomfortable with uncertainty. Femininity versus masculinity, that's kind of bit old-fashioned, but it's kind of the nurture is important and the power is important. Long-term orientation, short-term orientation is quite interesting because some countries where we, for example, our political system, we get a change of government every 4 years, is pretty short-term. Whereas other countries where they've got a long-term dictator who's just going to be there for his whole life, they will have longer-term futuristic programs. So it's actually quite an interesting one. And restraint versus indulgence. Restraint is good, duty. You don't just indulge all your desires and what you want to do. Another one, satisfaction is good. So that's the basic premise of it. And what you do is you might take two different countries. There's China and the United States, and you look how they compare on those different headings. So if we look here, the sexual dimensions. Oh, sorry, pressed the wrong button there. So this here is the 6 cultural dimensions, and it goes into great detail for each topic. There's a little video, and then you can see the world graph. This is individualism versus collectivism. So, the United States and Northern Europe and Australia, very individualistic. So that is one aspect. Let me put this in the chat if I can find it. This is when I'm sharing. I'll put it in for a minute. I'll put it in a minute. And the other one that I really want to share with you is the tool. So you can compare 2 countries with this country comparison tool. You can compare up to 4 countries. So this is the country comparison tool. And you can, hang on here. What you do is you select countries there, and you select 3 or 4 countries, and you can compare them underneath this. Now, is this useful? It's a little bit old-fashioned, as I say, in our times of globalism, but let me just come out of screen share so I can get you into the chat. So there you go. You can choose a few countries and compare the tool. And I'll also put you the overall link. Why is this useful? Because it can help you understand learners and their learning style and their cultural background in quite a simplistic way. Do you see how it works? You just choose the 4 countries and you can see how different they are. So it's quite useful. As I say, it's a little bit dated, but a lot of research went into it, and it is a bit stereotypical, but it can help you if you have learners. And also body distance. We haven't got time to go into it, but certain cultures are much more comfortable with being close than others. And it's quite surprising the cultures that you think wouldn't mind being quite close for body distance actually prefer a greater body space. So it's worth thinking about that as well when we're talking about communication. I'm not time to go into that today. I'm just going to finish off very quickly with a few more slides because it's just about time to finish. I put in a equality diversity video and talking about the cultural iceberg here. What we see on the top is the obvious things like holidays and flags and food and language, etc. But underneath on the iceberg are a lot of other concepts and notions and attitudes that we may not be familiar with and that will affect our learners in the classroom and how we communicate with them, okay? And the assumptions, again, talking about assumptions that we make. So the video there is the equality or diversity one, and it goes on to unconscious bias. And there is a very useful test from Harvard University which says take a test. That's a very useful test from Harvard University, which helps you test your unconscious bias to all sorts of things like weight, guns, so it really covers a lot of topics that maybe you hadn't thought you were biased against those. It's not just the usual ones. So the last one, we haven't had time. As I say, it's a long course. Usually it's 3 hours. I've had to try and squeeze it into an hour and a half. How to deal with bullies and difficult people. There's videos and articles there. And as I said, many people experience bullying at work in their lifetimes, and it's never that person's fault. It's just because we have psychopaths at work. The very interesting talk about how psychopaths weave their way up through the corporate ladder. And it's very interesting. So the way that you can use the actual words in any specific situation, these are the actual words that you use. And they're very powerful. There's this Canadian psychologist or an American psychologist, and he's got a YouTube video channel called The Wizard of Words, and he tells you the actual words. And my daughter's quite gentle and she is easily bullied. She's very competent and capable, but she is quite easily bullied. And she's had a series of, because she works in marketing and cutting edge kind of business, she's had some quite bullying managers. And this was the last straw, the last one she had. So she went in and she used these expressions, and she got 5 days working from home and a £4,500 salary rise just from using those expressions, because we got fed up with her leaving jobs. I was paying for counselling, £60 an hour. I said, this has got to stop. If this ever happens again, we have to find strategies to deal with it. So very, very powerful language that you can use if you're ever in that situation. And it gives you some little examples there. So that's the end of it. Sorry, I've gone over a couple of minutes. We're a couple of minutes late starting. There's resources that you can use, plenty of resources there. And I'd just like to say thank you very much for your time today. And I hope you've picked up some useful information and you will get the presentation sent on to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Claire. Just the comments I've been seeing in the chat, definitely people have found it useful. The active listening in particular seems to have been very useful. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
And Karen is asking if you'll be sharing the slides.